Hey everybody, I'm aujhaaye. Welcome back to SunshinehazeCo's channel. This is going to be a quick video on the upcoming Mercury retrograde that we have in the sign of Taurus. Before I get into specific energies for Mercury retrograde in Taurus, I do want to speak a little bit about what a retrograde actually is, what those energies are, and what you can expect pretty much from any retrograde. There is this misconception that retrogrades always bring chaos, when any and every astrologer will give you a different interpretation. The way that I speak to retrogrades and the way that I interpret the energy is more so on a reflect and correct level, and that is because of the way that the planets move when they are in retrograde. So when a planet is going into a retrograde period, it is an optical illusion. It seems like it's spinning backwards in the sky, but that's actually not what's happening. When a planet moves, it's going in one direction over a space of time. It's going over a certain amount of degrees in the sky. And so the planet moves this way. What happens when it goes retrograde is it stations. It's called stationing retrograde or turning retrograde. It'll slow down, turn, and head back in a different direction over those same periods or over those same degrees. And then it'll do the same thing back into the direction it was originally going in, and that's called stationing direct, okay? And so speaking to those energies, let's break it down a little bit. So let's say we have Mars retrograde in Aries. And we're gonna say it's moving through 10 degrees of Aries. Okay, so Mars is going 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's going to station retrograde or turn retrograde at 10 degrees of Aries and go 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. And then it's going to station direct at 6 degrees of Aries and go 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, so on and so forth. So speaking to the energy, retrograde energy is very prominent during the actual retrograde period, which would have been, what numbers was that? Would have been 6 degrees through 10 degrees of Aries, Mars retrograde, right? You also have shadow periods. And so the shadow period is when the planet is just passing over the retrograde numbers. So direct, the pre-shadow, because the planet was in retrograde 6 to 10 degrees of Aries, the pre-shadow is going to be while the planet is direct 6 to 10 degrees of Aries before it turns retrograde. So we're in pre-shadow Mars retrograde period, 6 to 10 degrees of Aries. And then we're in retrograde period, 10 to 6 degrees of Aries. And then once it stations direct, 6 to 10 degrees of Aries again is the post-shadow period. And so the post-shadows, you're dealing with the energy ramping up associated with the retrograde, and then you're also dealing with the residual on the post-shadow side of it. So general energies as far as the retrograde is concerned, and because of the way that is moving, that's where we get the reflecting correct. It's not necessarily chaos, it's just you need to take a moment sometimes to slow down and look at things, reanalyze things, break things down, figure out what needs to be shifted, what needs to be changed, and that's where the correct comes in for going direct. All right. Excuse me. So there we go. That's retrograde energy for you. This retrograde is going to be in Mercury, which Mercury is in retrograde about 19-20% of the time. So we get 3 or 4 Mercury retrogrades a year. We had 4 last year, I believe, and I think we have 4 this year because last year's last retrograde went into this year. So we'll be in retrograde energy, of Mercury retrograde energy, a few times this year. So it's a very familiar energy, and it is a very popular energy in pop culture. So Mercury, as I mentioned earlier, no, I did not mention this earlier. I was recording a video and my pet cat was tripping, and I was talking about this in that video, so I did not mention this earlier. Mercury is a planet that is considered a personal planet, and personal planets are the ones that affect us on a more tangible, more conscious level, like Venus, the moon, and Mercury and Mars, in comparison to the transcendental or transpersonal planets like Saturn, Jupiter, Pluto, the outer planets that affect us on a more subconscious level, and the effects take place over a longer course of time. Mercury is only in retrograde for a few weeks, so we're going to be feeling this and moving with it at pretty much as it's happening. Because it's a personal planet, it's going to affect us in those areas that I'm about to mention, because I didn't talk about this yet. In those areas that I'm about to mention, like I said, on a more tangible, more conscious level, Mercury governs communication, as we all know, which means listening and speaking and written communications, all the things. Mercury also governs, in old astrology books, you'll read sisters and brothers and neighbors, but what they're speaking to are friendly relationships, your friendships, your companions. It also governs travel, short-term travel more specifically, but it could, it could bleed over into long-term travel or moving, depending on, how things are set up in your chart. And I feel like I'm missing one. I said communication, friendships, travel. That is all I can think of. I think those are the main ones for Mercury, to be completely honest. So as we move through the retrograde period, those are the areas of our lives that are going to be affected mostly by Mercury being in retrograde. And because it is a reflect and correct period, things in those areas that need to be corrected or fixed or shifted, and where the energy needs to be shifted, are going to be brought up to the surface for us. And I'll get a little bit more into what those things are going to be in a few minutes. I want to speak a little bit to the zodiac or the astrological energy for this particular moon, which is Taurus. This year, our Mercury retrogrades are in earth signs. We had air and earth last year. So this year, Mercury retrograde is going to affect us more physically and more foundationally. Last year, it was more so mentally. This year, while Mercury does govern the mental, it's a lot of thinking about physical foundations, a lot of communication about physical foundations and things like that, okay? Taurus specifically is not the ram, that's Aries. Taurus is the bull. It's an earth sign, and it is a fixed sign. So just, what is buzzwords for Taurus? Loyal. Taurus is also very generous. Taurus is also very diligent. It is an earth sign, so Taurus can be very practical minded as well. And also very much so associated with entrepreneurial energy, okay? And those are just a few buzzwords for Taurus. This Mercury retrograde is going to line up with those planetary energies that I was speaking about, combined with the astrological energies that I just mentioned, okay? So generally speaking, to Mercury retrograde in Taurus, the energy is almost kind of like a reality check, bringing us back down to earth, so to speak. Figuring things out, getting things together, and seeing how we need to make corrections, where we need to be doing work, where we need to shift things in those foundational areas, okay? And when I speak to foundational themes, I'm speaking to literally two foundations, like career, finances, relationships, because those are foundational, and they could be on any front. That's romantic, familial, platonic, your friendships, also career space, business relationships as well. And when I speak to foundational energy, I'm also speaking to your dwelling space, because it is foundational, even though the home is typically associated with Cancer. Speaking to earth energy, I throw the home in there too. So things around those areas are going to be coming up for you over the course of this Mercury retrograde, all right? I want to talk a little bit about the aspects for this particular retrograde. There's a few, there's four major aspects that are going to come in and add or enhance the energy a little bit. There's a couple of conjunctions. We've got Mercury in conjunction with the moon, and also in conjunction with Uranus. So Mercury in conjunction with the moon, those energies are joining together. That's a very compatible, very harmonious aspect. Those energies are joining together, and the moon governs emotions, our feelings, spirituality, our gifts as well. Even though Pisces is associated with spiritual gifts, the moon is in there as well. Did I say feelings? I did say feelings. And so with the moon being in conjunction with Mercury for this Mercury retrograde, what's going to be coming up, and I keep it real in all of my little informational videos and in my readings, because the moon is over emotions, these next few weeks might be a little emotionally triggering for some people. Again, take a look at your personal chart in comparison to the transits to see how things are lining up for you, but emotional triggers are definitely going to be coming up for some people. And here's the thing with Mercury, again, reflect and correct, right? So emotional triggers that are popping up are only popping up for you, and we're dealing with the moon. The moon is the planet associated with healing and cleansing and release. If it's popping up for you, if you're feeling emotionally triggered over the next few weeks, it is because it's something that needs to be healed, something that needs to be acknowledged and released and worked through, okay? There's also an energy here with the moon for heightened intuition and spirituality and like and psychism, your gifts. This will probably be a time where spiritual communication is on 10 for people who are tapped into that. It's also going to be a time where just alignment with spiritual messages are coming in. I guess building off of what I just said, like them angel numbers, them animal messages, dreams, dream messages, just, you know, random communications that make sense to you in your process that might not make sense to anybody else will definitely be a little more prominent over the next few weeks with this particular energy, with this particular conjunction, okay? Mercury is also going to be in conjunction with Uranus. Uranus governs adventure, excitement, change, and surprises, okay? With Mercury energy joining with Uranus energy, there is this there's this energy of like anticipation and excitement for what's to come, what's next, specifically more so for what's happening after Mercury stations direct. For a lot of us, or a lot of people, there's probably projects you've been working on or projects that are unfolding over the next couple of weeks, and as Mercury stations direct, you'll see that unfolding a lot more, but excitement and anticipation for these things will be popping up by way of Uranus conjoining with Mercury. There's also, for some people, and again, look at your chart, there's also very, very high possibility of some sort of random surprise opportunity coming in that could shake things up. Because we are dealing with Mercury, I would go so far as to say like an opportunity coming in that could possibly cause you to have to travel or to have to move. You know, people say don't start anything new with Mercury, don't travel with Mercury being in retrograde, but what I say is to just make sure that you have all of your ducks in a row. So if you're going to travel, make sure you got backup plans. If you're going to take an opportunity, make sure that you're reading over that contract 3-4 times before you sign your name on the dotted line, and make sure you're negotiating the things that you want and that you need, okay? There's also a sextile being made to Mars with Mercury. I was talking about Mars. I was not talking about Mars in this video. I think I was talking about, or maybe I did talk. You know what? I'm just mad at Citrus because she got my brain all discombobulated. Because I'm like, did I talk about Mars in this video in my retrograde example? Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. Who knows? But Mercury is going to be making a sextile to Mars over the course of this retrograde period. There is an astrologer, a YouTube, well, she's not just a YouTube astrologer, but one that I like watching. Her name is Stormy. And when she speaks to sextile, she says it's like the planets are having sex with each other. So Mars and Mercury gonna be goosing over the course of this Mercury retrograde period. And that's another harmonious, positive aspect, another harmonious, positive energy. Mars is over action, instinct. Mars is also associated with sex. Fun fact in there. With this particular sextile, this brings in drive and motivation and courage. So what I will say, especially with that Uranus energy in here, with opportunities coming in and change coming up, this Mars energy gives us the courage to actually move forward with those changes, especially if they're unexpected and if they are something we're supposed to be in alignment with. Now, because this is a Mercury retrograde, what I will also say is that there's also a tendency toward aggression, especially regarding the things that we want or the opportunities that we're trying to get. So just be mindful of the way that you are moving toward things. You don't have to be super aggressive to get what you want. There is a way to demand the things that you need and the things that you desire without being rude, without being over the top. And that is an energy that you do have to be mindful about with this sextile being made to Mars during, voice cracking like a little boy in puberty, with the sextile being made to Mars during a Mercury retrograde period, okay? There is one other aspect that doesn't necessarily involve Mercury, but it is kind of a major aspect that is going to lend a little bit of a shift in energy while Mercury is in retrograde, and that is the Sun making a square to Pluto, which brings in a bit of a power struggle. So just to kind of piggyback off of what I was saying about, you know, going for the things that you want with Mars, the Sun is going to be illuminating over the course of this retrograde period. The Pluto is the depths of our soul, the things that we truly and honestly desire, and the things that we really need to be in alignment with. And if we're not in those spaces, or we haven't figured out how to put ourselves in those spaces yet, what's going to be coming up internally is almost like a power struggle and almost like an argument within yourself, like, okay, this is what I need to do, but I don't have this. We need to go this way, but life is making me do like that. That's a little energy that'll be coming up with the sun making the square to Pluto. But with squares, and let me just kick this out there, when you have a square aspect, typically it is bringing in to teach you how to work through something, how to line something up, okay? You're perpendicular and the square is like, let me show you how to go parallel so we can do this together in tandem with whatever we got going on harmoniously. So even though the square is a little bit of a tougher energy, there's also the illumination aspect with the sun that will show us how to work through that particular energy, okay? And that's really all I got for Mercury retrograde in Taurus. This Mercury retrograde starts on April 21st and it will be going through May 7th. I'm not, got too excited. That's not long enough. May 14th. May 14th. 7th came from April 7th. We went into the pre-shadow period of Mercury retrograde on April 7th. Mercury retrograde lasts from April 21st to May 14th. Post-shadow will be lasting until May 31st. So Mercury retrograde energies all up and throughout them dates that I just mentioned. It is starting in 15 degrees and it will station direct in 5 degrees. I didn't have the numbers memorized. So with that 5 energy here and then just being amplified by 1 and then 15 breaking down to 6, there's a lot of energy for change here. So Mercury retrograde, reflecting correct, making changes that will help put us in a like coming back to reality, bringing ourselves back down to the ground, making the necessary changes and doing the necessary work to put us in those successful spaces. Remember that Taurus is ruled by Venus, and Venus is the planet of lavish, luxurious, and life's pleasures. That sentence didn't come out right, but y'all know what I meant. So, you know, whatever changes are being made for us over Mercury retrograde with it being in Taurus, it's going to put us in a position to experience all those poppin' ass Venusian energies on the other side of Mercury stationing direct, okay? And that is all I got for Mercury retrograde in Taurus. If you need a personal Mercury retrograde reading, they are available. I will link them in the description box, depending on where you're watching this. The link will be somewhere. I also have collective Mercury retrograde readings for all signs. Those are free and those can be found on my YouTube for probably about a week. And then if you want to access them after that, you will need to subscribe to my Patreon. And I have several different tiers. I will put up a separate video explaining all of that because I don't want to go too long on this one. But good luck, because I feel like luck needs to be given anytime Mercury goes into retrograde. But also remember, reflect and correct. It's not all chaos. Everything is happening for a reason, and it's so that on the other side of this planet stationing direct, you can do what you want when you pop in, because you'll be in a position to make shit pop in as you reflect and correct. All right, talking in circles, but I hope you guys got the message. Thank you for tuning in, and I will catch y'all next time. Peace.